Mikel Arteta is looking to make history by doing something that Arsenal has yet to achieve: win a Champions League title. Thierry Henry helped lead Arsenal to the finals in 2005-2006, but they did eventually fall to Ronaldinho's Barcelona. Now they look to make their way back to the finals. Take a listen to what Arsenal's Declan Rice had to say about their big win yesterday.
It's a historic night for this club. We have an objective in this competition. We want to play the best teams and we want to win this competition. And there was a lot of talk coming here about them coming back because they've done it so many times before. But we had so much belief and confidence from that first leg that we had enough to come here and win the game, and not just win the game. We knew we was going to suffer, but we knew we was going to win. And yeah, we had it in our mind, and then we done it in real life.
Well, Mundo Deportivo, they got Nico's stamp of approval with this morning's paper. SACKED. Nico,
it's over.
It is.
Se acabó. This is what an editor-in-chief gets paid to do. Not only does it get my approval, it gets a standing ovation. The Barcelona-based newspaper usually never has Madrid on the cover, and it was opportunistic. The chip finished by Saka, se acabó. Or as Benny said it in English, the translation, what would it be?
Bukai over.
Arsenal took care of business. There was never this huge symphony, dramatic. Arsenal walked into the Bernabeu. There was a moment of adversity, a poor penalty kick from Saka, but they weathered the storm with football, with personality. They played in spaces in the midfield, exposed Real Madrid for the lack of football that they've shown, and walked away the deserved champions of this time.
Arsenal, this was a masterclass. And with Mikel Arteta ending this match and just showing thanks and gratitude to Pep Guardiola for his stewardship and what he could possibly do coming into this to get him to this point as a manager was also class.
And what we saw with Arsenal on Wednesday, we didn't see on Tuesday from either of the two teams that had big leads, right? We saw Barcelona struggle against Dortmund. We saw PSG struggle against Aston Villa. It's not easy to take a 3-0 lead and play in the second leg the way they did. They were in control of that game from start to finish. The only highlight for Real Madrid was the penalty save, right? And so I think we could talk about Arsenal, and we should, and they deserve a lot of praise. But there's also some negative that we need to talk about from Real Madrid, because you're playing at home, you're 15-time champion, you're the kings of Europe, and we saw nothing. The field was never tilted in their favor. There was no runs forward. Everybody wanted balls to their feet and trying to dribble. You know, there's too many players behind the line of the ball to be able to dribble the ball. For Vinny and Rodrigo, no runs in behind. So it was a very disappointing performance for me for Real Madrid.
There was never an onslaught throughout the two games. Imagine that these three went scoreless essentially through 180 minutes because the goal that they did score was to no merit of their own. It was more of a Saliba mistake than Vinicius pouncing. Saliba should never be giving that ball up. It was poor from start to finish, from the start of the first leg to the end of the second leg. And Arsenal, you could say, comprehensively took care of business. For Real Madrid, though, and I want to get this point across because there was so much of this remontada narrative pushed. Almost this fairy tale thrust in our faces from Spain, from the players in the press conference and the media and the belief. And Real Madrid historically has created this aura, and it's almost like we wanted to believe that it was possible because there needed something mystical yesterday. They needed something mystical yesterday because if you looked at it from a pure footballing terms, they weren't better than Arsenal.
No.
And at the end of the day, the football did the talking. And I'm so glad the penalty kicks weren't the main narrative yesterday because the football won. The better football team went through to the next round. So enough of selling a fable that isn't the reality. And yesterday, Arsenal slayed Goliath, but they slayed Goliath with much more ease than I would have ever thought Arsenal was going to have. Remontadas historically for Madrid in the Bernabeu, they need a catalyst. And it's when you least expect it. And when Arsenal punched, Madrid punched right back, and that felt like, oh, fours are up there. They're back in it, right? The belief was never there because the football was there. And ultimately, I think there's times that Real Madrid play poorly and still win because of that aura that they have in the Champions League. But yesterday they didn't play poorly. They didn't play. Mm-hmm. And that's the difference this season.
Nico, I want to add to the football part. You're talking about the football a little bit. And let's just compare it. PSG, Aston Villa, what's the better team? What's the better team between those? Who's more talented?
PSG, I think, has more quality.
But we saw something from Aston Villa on Tuesday, correct?
Right.
Agreed. Dortmund, Barcelona, what's the better team?
Yeah, Barca.
We saw something from Dortmund. We saw nothing from Real Madrid. Nothing. We didn't see any runs into the box. We didn't see any runs in behind. We didn't see service into the box. It was as if they were playing almost for a 0-0 draw the whole game. So as much as we talk about the talent and the quality of the players that aren't there maybe from years past in Real Madrid, where is the desire? Where's the belief? You got to compete. It's a Champions League quarterfinals. You didn't see any competitive edge at the Bernabeu. It was
concerning,
extremely disappointing.
Concerning,
very disappointing.
Too. And obviously the fallout is Ancelotti, and we'll talk about this later, right? He takes the brunt of the blame here. But again, it feels like because Real Madrid is such a focus here, they're the 15-time champions, we don't give Arsenal credit because Arsenal deserves a lot of credit. The reason that they were so silent was because of the great things that Arsenal did. But I didn't expect Madrid to kind of just whimper out of this tournament. The telling snapshot was their talisman, their best player that they so desperately searched for so many off seasons, limping off the field, injured, not even having a sniff of a remontada.
I'm curious as to how they're going to match up against this PSG side. Will they make it look easy against PSG? You know, Arsenal, they've got 6 clean sheets this season in Champions League, just one more than PSG, who are scoring 2.1 goals per match compared to Arsenal with 2.5 goals per match. How do you guys see these two teams matching up against each other?
This is going to be not even a level up for Arsenal. This is going to be 3 or 4 levels up because, sure, Real Madrid has individual quality, but they're unable to make it shine. The front 3 of PSG maybe aren't the superstars that the front 3 of Real Madrid are, but they play like a freaking team, and they're Ferraris. They're very good. So Arsenal's next step in their evolution as a team, sure, you got to semifinal. That's absolutely sensational. The project feels like it's taken a step forward when perhaps it stalled. Huge next test coming up.
Questions surrounding how long Carlo Ancelotti would be at Real Madrid for the last 2 seasons, starting 2 summers ago when the Brazilian president of the FA said he expected Ancelotti to leave Real Madrid and become the Brazilian manager. Those rumors continued to swirl through the end of 2023 when Ancelotti and Real Madrid announced Don Carlo would stay with the club through 2026. So, story closed, right? Well, fast forward to this past January as Real Madrid struggled to gel, more questions came. Ancelotti announced that he hoped to stay for 4 more years, marking 2029 as his hopeful departure date. We head to March. Mario Cortegana of The Athletic reported that Xabi Alonso is the club's choice to replace Ancelotti, quote, when the time comes. Simultaneously, reports of Ancelotti once again talking with the Brazilian Federation about taking over the job prior to the 2026 World Cup. Real Madrid eliminated from Champions League on Wednesday, and this is what Ancelotti had to say afterwards. Is it my last Champions League match? It could happen if the club decides to make a change. There's no problem at all. The day I finish here, I can only do one thing: thank the club. Whether my contract ends or not, I couldn't care less. Now, Carlo Ancelotti's resume as manager of Real Madrid, it includes 15 trophies, the most in club history, and 3 of those are Champions League titles. So now this begs the question of, is Carlo Ancelotti staying past this season? And if he isn't, who could possibly replace him?
Starting with me, with the obvious choice, with Bayer Leverkusen's own Xabi Alonso. Obviously, he's been in the conversation quite prominently. I think, obviously, very young manager. However, what he's managed to do, he's demonstrated that he is a tactician. He's got high emotional intelligence and knows how to manage players, knows how to get the best out of them, such as players like Florian Wirtz. I think that what he'll bring to the side will actually be more of a harmony. You'll actually get Real Madrid to modernize, for one, and also play as a team, as a cohesive unit, which we have yet to see, quite frankly. But I think in what he manages to do with his style, sort of, that we've seen at Leverkusen, marrying that with the talent and what they've already built at Real Madrid, it bridges a gap, and I think it gives them some longevity longevity. I think for him, both his age and the capacity to sort of get this dynastic Real Madrid back on track would be a good foothold for them going forward.
I give Xabi Alonso a little bit more time before he takes a Real Madrid job. I think he's a very systematic manager, and Real Madrid, although yes, I think they need a little bit more structure, that was lost with Toni Kroos. I don't think you need to tinker so much. It's find that right balance and harmony, like you said, but it feels like the amount of structure that Xabi Alonso gives Bayer Leverkusen, if you translate that to Real Madrid now with this specific team, you'd put them in a straitjacket. And it feels like the timing just isn't right. Perhaps when they move on from the Vinicius, the Rodrigo, and they need a little bit more of a foundation, I would then go with Xabi Alonso.
Do you think that with Xabi's player career with Madrid, having won the league, having won Champions League, understanding the politics within the Bernabeu, that would come into the broader conversation where he might be a little bit more of a structural individual to sort of move forward with them?
I think there's a time.
I get it. I agree with you.
And I think he can command a dressing room with the egos and the personalities, the superstars that Real Madrid have. I would take a beat, see how he does next season at Bayer Leverkusen.
You've got a different Spanish manager
I
that you
totally
think.
agree with what Nico's saying. I think you look at Carlo Ancelotti, the kind of coach that he is, he's calm on the sideline. These players didn't show well, and we talked about it obviously in the first segment with how Real Madrid just looked dead in the water. I want some energy on the sideline. So I bring in what has been arguably the best manager in European football the last 2 years, Unai Emery, with all of his antics on the sideline, bring some personality to this team, get, Vinny, Rodrigo, Mbappé hopefully moving a little bit more like we see from some of the players at Aston Villa. And look, I love his demeanor on the sideline. I think that would, it's maybe not what Real Madrid is used to, but I think that would look awesome to see there at the
Europa League
Bernabeu.
king. I have
You want
question
to win the
marks around
Champions
him.
League, right? You need to
Yeah.
get over the line. When push comes to shove in those moments, he's a manager that's won a plethora of European trophies, none of which have been the Champions League. I'm thinking back to the last methodological manager that they hired, Lopetegui. Didn't last for long. He was coming from the Spanish national team, a bit of drama there. It all started poorly. It ended poorly very quickly. I think he deserves a shot again at a big team. I don't know if Real Madrid's going to be that team coming. It just feels like Real Madrid is a club that doesn't get complicated when they hire managers because they want the best. They want someone that's been there before, won it before, and doesn't bring this this ideology that is imposing onto what they want to do. My hot take is, and I said it months ago. My hot take is, get rid of Vini, get a 9. Simplify things a little bit. We don't know whose team it is. Is it Mbappe's team? Is it Vinicius' team? I think Vinicius has done a lot with the club, and I think he has a lot of. He's become a little bit of problematic. He's getting in it with a lot of rivals, getting in it with the referees. Players have to push him off the field. His own teammates have to escort him off the field when he gets in it with the referees. If that happens, and then it becomes Mbappe's team, there's a Frenchman that has been at
So who you got, Nico?
Real Madrid before, who's out of a job, who actually hasn't gotten back to coaching
How
since
convenient.
He's left Real Madrid, and that's Zinedine Zidane. I think he's waiting out for the French job, to be honest, but that doesn't come until the end of the 2026 World Cup. So one whole season from now, and Real Madrid's not going to wait for anybody. So I'd go knock on the door.
I don't know if he'd accept the
Zidane.
job. Do you think he would accept the job at this point?
No, I don't.
You got to knock on the door, though.
Knock on the door. Why not ask? You don't lose anything. And then the other one is that's been surfacing right now per reports in Brazil, and I don't want to jump on any report that I see, but Klopp is also available, right? He's not coaching.
I thought Klopp was retired.
I mean, retired from the Prem, apparently. I don't know.
It's just, I'm thinking of the managers. Go back 10 years. Mourinho had won Champions League twice when he showed up to Real Madrid, and he was that type of personality that he would get the players together. He was a locker room type of guy. The one person that really didn't have an incredible CV with the titles was Manuel Pellegrini, and although he wasn't poor, he never ended up winning the Champions League, and he's not remembered for his time at Real Madrid. Neither was Lopetegui. I'm thinking then came Carlo. They then fired Carlo. They went with Zidane. It's difficult to be a Real Madrid manager. It's, you know, you don't get.
It's a tough job.
Yeah, but even when you're as successful as Carlo Ancelotti, I mean, I would take him anywhere. Yeah, it's brutal.
It's brutal, for sure. Where do you think he goes next if he does leave Real Madrid? I mean, Cupo, you said I'd do anything.
He's leaving.
For Italy.
I would love for him to come back to Italy. Not anything against Spallettone, but if he would come coach Gli Azzurri, that would be a dream. I would love to have him back there. But quite frankly, even if he wanted to come coach back in Serie A, open doors. You know, maybe Roma, maybe Claudio Ranieri doesn't want to be unretired for very long. I could see him doing that.
Give Spallettone the panettone in December. This guy coached the Azzurri in the 2026 World Cup.
Benny, you think he's done after this?
I think that he's tailor-made right now for an international team, and nobody needs a manager more so than Brazil.